Welcome into the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined as always on a Monday by Brian Perroni. Fresh off a bye week, Brian, how'd the bye week treat you?
Oh, I love watching Texas A&M football. I love when it's on, but since it's a job for us, it was sort of nice. Got a chance to watch a lot of other football. Great
Yeah,
game
no,
between Alabama and Tennessee. I had a chance to watch that whole thing, so that's not usual that we were able to do that.
it's rare. I had a chance to sit down with some friends and watch the UCLA USC game, which was also a tremendous game.
Yeah, and
Especially,
it was a good Saturday of football.
yeah, except for I did watch it with a USC fan, and so not a good Saturday for him. But it was a tremendous football game all around. And yeah, you're right. The Tennessee Alabama game took the cake in terms of upsets and or not even an ups, just flat out outplayed them on and just a tremendous environment there in Neyland Stadium. And A&M's heading into a tough environment on Saturday night as well. South Carolina, we talked about this last week with Tarp about a Saturday night kickoff and against South Carolina. They're coming off a bye as well. This is going to be a tough environment for A&M to walk into. And just what do you think heading into this game and what the stakes are going to be for A&M on the A&M front?
And I've only personally been to South Carolina once. It was for this is going to date me. It was the first ever game on the SEC network. It was a Thursday
Mhm.
night game with the A&M in South Carolina. And at that point, they had won a whole bunch of home games in a row. It was seen as incredibly intimidating atmosphere. They played Sandstorm all the time, which I didn't really know what Sandstorm was. And now anytime I see them, I can't get out of my head. And it's like, but but it was crazy. I mean, A&M, that was when Kenny Hill got the nickname Kenny Thrill and looked like he was going to be a Heisman Trophy winner. It wasn't it really wasn't that intimidating environment at then, but it can for sure get loud there at Williams Brice. As far as the matchup, I mean, South Carolina has been talked about since before the season about how great they were
Mhm.
going to be because they got a QB in Spencer Rattler. He's been he's had his moments, but hasn't been incredibly impressive this year. This is a good chance for A&M to get in the winning column again in SEC play. And I mean, they need this if they want to turn the season around at all, because the next week you've got a top 10 Ole Miss team and you've got OSU later on. So it's big for them to get this win, and I think they should. Now, I mean, I know we're going to talk about this, but there's questions at quarterback and some other places. So that's going to be interesting to see. But it should be a win for A&M.
No doubt. And for me, I do look at this as just a huge opportunity for A&M. And uh, they haven't been home in well over a month, and we'll certainly get to that later. Kickoff was set for those that hadn't seen it. A&M will be back at home on October 29th against Ole Miss. It's a 6:30 kickoff for that too, a night game at Kyle Field. But looking at this game, this kind of sets the course for me for the second half of the year. You mentioned could probably going to be a top 10 Ole Miss team coming in the next weekend against A&M to Kyle Field. And coming off, there's no moral victories, but there was certainly a lot of positive talk about all the steps that A&M had taken on offense with guys growing up. If you come out and don't play well coming out of the bye week against South Carolina, it you take one step forward and two steps back in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of all the progress that you made in that Alabama game. So I think this game really sets the statement, especially for A&M to be able to come out on the road and handle that as sort of environment. I think it's another chance to grow up, and I'm with you. I think A&M does end up winning this game as well, but really curious to see how they come out. You mentioned the quarterback position. There was a lot of talk, and most of the conversation today kind of dominated the press conference for Jimbo Fisher. And he, on a health front, did mention that Haynes King is good to go. Mentioned that early on in the press conference, and was asked about Connor Wigman as well. And that's an interesting part for me. The next 6 weeks, we really talked about this. Well, how would you handle this? Do you think would you have a series or two for him in every game just to kind of get him some experience, or what do you feel like is the best way to kind of handle this?
I think you got to get him in there this weekend. There's really
Yeah.
not another good opportunity. Plus, he's the backup now. If he's not the starter, I think
Yep.
there's a chance we see him still come out and start. If he's not the starter, he's the backup, and you can't have a backup with no experience. So you somehow got to get him in against South Carolina because you don't want to throw him in there for the first time against Ole Miss or some of these other teams. So you just have to, and I think you will see a few series for him at least in most of the games. There's a chance A&M wants to keep his red shirt, but in this day and age, if a guy's an NFL guy, which everybody thinks they don't stay around for 5 years. So, so I think we will see him. I mean, he's yet to take a snap. He hasn't been on the field. He's one of the few true freshmen to have not played at all. So I think we have to see him this weekend, whether it be to start, whether it be a couple series in. If A&M, if the offense just takes off under King, well, then you got to think the defense does well, and it could be out of hand. But if the offense doesn't take off, then you got to get him in there. So both ways, he should have a chance.
No, I almost think you've got to have, and you can be kind of flexible with this, but you've almost got to have like a series, like, okay, in the second quarter, if we get a possession, we're going to get him a series here. And in the third quarter, we're going to get one and kind of try to chart out just to get him experience, get him a drive. It can even serve as a chance to talk to Haynes King about things that you're seeing in the game and kind of go through there. But I think getting Connor Wigman experience has to be important. We talked about this heading into the Alabama game and coming out of the Alabama game, and the way Haynes King played, and Jimbo Fisher had a lot of praise for the way he played in the Alabama game, and certainly played well, made a lot of plays, had probably his best game that he's played so far, and a lot to build off of on that front. But I think you certainly have to get Connor Wigman experience, and also I think you also have to have something that fans can kind of latch onto and recruits can latch onto.
Yeah.
Seeing Connor Wigman play, I think that's certainly important as well. On the Haynes King front, sticking with him for a minute too, what do you think he can build off that Alabama game? Do you think it's playing faster, playing freer, or what do you think are the steps that he can kind of take off that Alabama game?
I don't know. I mean, he did have to, it forced him to grow up a little bit, just like it did Zach Calzada last year. But King is so much more comfortable outside the pocket than in it. So instead of what did he learn, I think maybe A&M learns from that and play calls differently for him. I mean, he's always been that way in high school. He's more comfortable on the run. Yet A&M doesn't really play call a lot for him to be on the run. They don't scramble him or boot him out or anything. So I think maybe we start seeing that a little bit, because when he was able to do that, when he wasn't just dropping back and trying to read the field, I mean, he reads it better when he's on the run. It's just the case. So I think maybe that's what changes as A&M starts doing that a little bit with him.
I think the other part about that is it simplifies reads for him. It gives him, instead of having to look across the entire field, it gives him half a field to kind of look at and see if there's a guy open or not, or take off and run and use your legs. And we certainly saw him be able to show off that speed at times over the past couple of weeks. I'm with you. And I was going to say, I mean, he's got to obviously protect the ball. The turnover right before halftime was key. But I think also go up and the biggest thing I think you learn in that game is go up and give your receivers a chance. Give a guy like Evan Stewart a chance to win a jump ball and get him down the field. And
we talked about it last week. I'm still thinking about that Evan Stewart jump ball down the right sideline. How impressive that was.
Incredible. And I've seen the replay a couple more times, and it's just incredible watching the Pulse episode that you put out last week, just going back and watching that play again and again. You come out of it thinking, how did he come down with that ball? And I think the Alabama defensive backs were thinking the same thing. And I think the other key is A&M's got to be able to get the running game going a little bit more to be able to try to lessen the pressure on Haynes King on that front as well. They took strides. Jimbo Fisher talked today about the strides that Camp Dewberry's made over the first couple of weeks of the year. I think that was a positive. I think he needs to see much more time moving forward, and didn't say he was off to a slow start, but said he just kind of was on the natural progression of a freshman. And I think if they can get him going in the second half of the year, that could be huge for this offensive line.
Oh no, for sure. And yeah, we're talking about getting Haynes outside the pocket, and you talked about, running. Yeah, that's basically a head start instead of him having to drop back, 3 steps or 5 steps or whatever, and then all of a sudden take off when he gets pressure. I mean, you've got him. You got running is always an option, and that's dangerous for his arsenal. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And then with the young offensive line, I'm curious what Cam Dewberry is able to do, and if if left tackle is available, if Zune isn't able to go or struggles, I mean, it'd be interesting to see Dewberry at left tackle. He's trained at both spots, so and he played tackle in high school, so yeah, there are some different wrinkles we could see going forward on the offense.
No doubt, it's there wasn't a ton of health updates coming out of Monday's press. Jimbo Fisher kind of talked about he couldn't, and which I don't think there should have been an expectation for a ton. That's you and I have joked about this before that Jimbo Fisher's not going to give a whole lot away in terms of press conferences, and that was certainly the case today. Talked about Jordan Spasovich Moko as well, having surgery, and kind of mentioned he doesn't know how long he'll be out. And if
Moko's already tweeted his goodbyes for the season. He's like, all right, it's a great year. Be back next year. And Jimbo still won't say he's out.
It's still what. So on an injury front, I think A&M's going to be able to get some guys back, and they talked about how beneficial that bye week. That's always the case for a bye week. You start to get guys a little bit more healthy and try to get them back. But there wasn't a whole lot of clarity about guys coming back, and Jimbo Fisher's always kind of operated that way. So not too surprising. We'll have a lot more later in the week with we'll have a South Carolina expert on to kind of preview that South Carolina matchup, but also going to take a look ahead. As I mentioned, Ole Miss, that kickoff got announced, and that's going to be a huge recruiting weekend for Texas A&M, and we're going to talk a little more about some other recruiting news and look ahead to that Ole Miss weekend coming out after a quick break. Welcome back into the Gig 'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined again by Brian Perroni. Brian, looking a little bit at the recruiting front, we obviously talked about this before the season, but it's going to be more than a month, basically a month and a half, since A&M is able to host visitors. From the Miami game to Ole Miss is basically the wait that A&M had to go on from September 17th to October 29th. That game with a 6:30 kickoff is going to be what is expected to be a huge recruiting weekend for A&M. And then, we've kind of both heard the feedback when it comes to A&M recruiting that it feels like there isn't a lot of momentum right now, and there isn't much of there just isn't much for fans to really latch onto in terms of recruiting. How much do you think being able to get back on campus might have something to do with that, and being able to get these guys back on campus? Because for me, I think that's really what's missing, and it was to be expected coming into the season. We kind of knew the schedule was going to be kind of backloaded on that front, but do you think it'll have a huge impact, or what do you think it might mean?
I think it'll have an impact for sure. I mean, literally yesterday, I was like, man, how come we haven't been putting together visitor lists for games? I was like, oh yeah, I'm an idiot. There's not been anything anywhere near Kyle Field in forever. I mean, it's a month and a half between home games. Since you add the neutral site game and the bye weekend, they're like, that's crazy. That's sort of insane. It also happens to Arkansas next year as well, with them being the home team in that neutral game. They have a long time away.
Shocker why both ADs want to get rid of that, neutral site game, right?
Yeah, bring it back to campus. If they extend that again, and I don't think they will, but if they extend that again at AT&T. But no, it's going to be that should be a good weekend. I mean, Malik Muhammad, the Texas top 50 Texas cornerback commit, is supposed to be at A&M that weekend on an official. I assume there will be some others, but you're gonna, with it being a night game, you're gonna have probably all the kids in the state of Texas want to be there. Just like with Miami, you'll probably have quite a few out of state guys come as well. They can they can fly in after their games and don't have to rush. If they fly into Houston, don't have to rush to Kyle Field or College Station. So, yeah, it's going to be if A&M wins and Ole Miss wins. I mean, it's a battle of team receiving votes probably and a team in the top 10.
Yeah.
Even though Ole Miss is in the top 10. They're undefeated. They haven't really looked all that great. The passing offense hasn't been where it's been in the past, but they sure can run the ball. But it'll be two teams in the top 10 playing at night. And so, yeah, it'll be a good environment. I think it'll be another one of those, close to sellout, if not sellout, 100 whatever thousand people in the stands that will impress recruits. Probably more so 24 recruits, though, if we're talking about at
Yeah.
this point in the season, because the older guys are taking their official visits. Most of them have already decided, and most are solid. I mean, the latest top 247 came out last week, and in the state of Texas, there were like 35 or 40 guys in there. A total of three of those from Texas were not committed at this point. So it's just sort of crazy, not just here, but all over the country, how many guys have already made decisions. Now, A&M is still going after plenty of commits, but it'll probably be a bunch of 24 and 25 guys, the bigger names at that one.
Makes things a little bit different, but that's really the thought I had too. Is guys like I even looked at guys like, and we're already, you and I have both started to hit the phones already, and it felt good to kind of start checking
Yeah.
with kids. We've talked about it before at length that kids don't really start making their decisions until 2 or so weeks before a game and on where they're going to go, just because they got a lot of coaches hitting him up trying to get him to go different places. And so, this is really the first opportunity this week to be able to hit guys up and see who's coming to that Ole Miss game and the expectations there. Guys like Camarion Franklin, will he be able to make it into town? He's been to A&M twice already, and with Ole Miss in town, it would be a good opportunity for him to see both teams. So certainly an opportunity there, and I do think it'll give A&M a bit of a shot in the arm if they can win or play. Be able to show off a great environment. It's a huge opportunity, and if A&M's looking to kind of have something to build off of, both in the 2023 and 2024 class, you have your opportunity right there. It's between Ole Miss, Florida, and LSU, A&M's got three golden opportunities to make impressions on recruits coming up. And while they've had the chance to go out to a lot of different games around the country the past month or so, it's just a huge opportunity. And it was a tough week for A&M last week. Another tough week, especially in the 2023 class. Right after we recorded this last week, Roderick Robinson flips his commitment from UCLA to Georgia. That was a guy A&M was after heavily, had him on for an official visit, had him in town for an official visit for that Miami game. And then over the weekend, Jeremiah Love, another key target, commits to Notre Dame. And it's becoming a storyline, especially at the skill position front. Where do you think A&M kind of pivots from here to running back? For me, it just makes the recruitment of Reuben Owens that much more important. But you've also got another name to at least keep an eye on or keep in the back of the mind, and where A&M could kind of pivot to in terms of running backs.
Yeah, Reuben Owens is now even more important. I mean, he's a guy that even after coming to Louisville, I mean, he's remained in contact with A&M the whole time. So that'd be one. But A&M, no matter, they've wanted two this whole time. I mean, it was Reuben Owens and Love or Roger Robinson or any combination of the three. I think a guy to watch, Kedrick Riscano. He's a 4-star from New Caney, just north of Houston. He's been long time commit to Michigan State, but Michigan State's having trouble holding on to guys. So I think if A&M showed him interest or offered, he would give a heavy look. I mean, he's been to College Station a couple times, been to camp, so that would be probably the main name to watch if we're talking about new offers going out. Now they'll likely look out of state too and look at they always seem to love guys from the state of Alabama, so we got to look at or random running backs from South Florida. So I got to sort of look at those. But I think Riscano is a big one to watch, and he's also, I mean, he's a guy that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's also sort of big. He can take the pounding in the SEC. So that's he would seem to be the fit. And I know that he's a guy that A&M has looked at before. They haven't offered at this point, but they've looked at before this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the name to watch.
No doubt, and I thought it was just a good point that you brought up right before we started recording about Riscano and a guy that it, like you said, A&M seems to just keep tabs on and know exactly kind of they've certainly scouted him quite a bit and know exactly what he brings to the table, and just an intriguing name to watch as names kind of continue to come off the books and they see guys head elsewhere. I think he's one. Christopher Johnson's another one out of Florida. Talking to people there, it does seem like he's not necessarily like a natural ball carrier, which would kind of be, I think, the one concern folks have with him in terms of he's obviously got tremendous speed, but that's the one thing I hear is that he's not really a natural ball carrier. So, from a scouting element, could you work with him on that and develop him? That would probably be a bit more of a development option. But I thought Riscano and my first thought was this makes Ruben Owens that much more important, and I don't think anything's dead there with 2 months to go. We've talked about it before that he remains in contact with A&M. They almost got him on campus for the Miami game, and we'll have 3 more opportunities to kind of you know kind of get him back in town closer to signing day. At least still has the official visit left to use. On the receiver front, I mean, had a chance to Gabby Arrudia from our Miami site was out at Jalen Brown's game last weekend and mentioned that he is taking a day-by-day approach with his recruitment. Obviously still committed to LSU, and was in town for an official visit and really liked it. Talks with James Coley quite often. Him and Hakeem Williams seem like the two guys for me that A&M can continue to push for and stay in the mix and they're going to have to flip guys. It's just a reality. They're either going to have to flip guys or they're going to have to be active in the transfer portal after the season. Those are kind of your 2 options. And so I think those are 2 guys you can continue to plug away on. And if you get one of them and you have to go into the portal for the second half, Hakeem Williams was just over at Miami recently for a visit again. So don't think that one's out of the running either yet. I think A&M can still try to push to get him back on campus as well. But are there any other guys that you're kind of keeping your eye on, Brian, or guys that A&M could make a run on?
Yeah, so Jonah Wilson, who's from
Yep.
Spring Decaney, A&M was actually one of the first schools to offer him last year whenever he had made the move from quarterback to receiver. He's having an impressive senior year, and he started to have second thoughts about his Texas commitment and decommitted a few weeks ago. Now, Houston is the school that will likely get him if A&M doesn't and if A&M doesn't push. A&M's offered, but
Yep.
if they don't get back in there. But I've been told if A&M does get back in there that the Aggies are in a really good spot and could land him. So, he's sort of a bigger guy. He's built a little bit like Chris Marshall. Now, Chris Marshall is a freak, athletically. So I don't want to, say he is Chris Marshall, but he's built like that. He's got good speed. So, and A&M seems to like those, 6'2" type receivers. So I could definitely see the Aggies, moving on him at some point.
Like like you mentioned, they've had the chance to really evaluate that senior film, and it's going to be interesting to see if they do start pushing the second half of the year. Obviously, recruiting kind of came to the forefront last week. The A&M staff was out and about. DJ Durkin was over at the Denton Geyer game, watching Peyton Bowen, which was a notable development. Steve Adazio and Damian Craig were out at Westlake and Dripping Springs watching TJ Shanahan and still watching Austin Novosad, though he seems pretty firm in his pledge to Baylor right now. But it was a chance for the staff to get out and do some recruiting, extend some new offers, and kind of kick back up on the recruiting front. So we'll have plenty more on that front next week as we start to look ahead, like I said, to a visit weekend. It's been way too long since we were able to do that, and it's kind of a crazy quirk of the scheduling. But we'll certainly be back, and again we'll have a South Carolina expert on later in the week to look ahead to the South Carolina game as well. As we kind of close out here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube to get a notification every time a new video drops, and follow us on Spotify and iTunes as well, and be sure to give us a 5-star review on there as well. Otherwise, Brian, we'll be back next week again to kind of recap that South Carolina game and get back going here. So until then, everyone, we'll talk to you guys soon.